Afternoon. I'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging we're in Treaty 1 territory, a traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. I'll introduce the members of the panel. To my far left is Mr. Kent Seelan. To my immediate left is Ms. Carrie Linklater. My name is Stu McPherson. I'll be chairing the hearing. And representing the City of Winnipeg Assessment Taxation Department is Ms. Tricia Caldwell, and the recording secretary is Ms. Belen Rojo. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application. We'll limit discussion to those matters. The statements applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony. Anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Please be advised, comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council. It's independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they so wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave, and the process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. Just as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. You swear the parties in, please. If you have a cell phone, please put that on silent.
Please state your full name.
Tricia Caldwell.
And you affirm the evidence to represent the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please state your full name.
Rocky Neutral.
And you affirm the evidence about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Afternoon, Mr. Neufeld. You're representing the owners of 10 properties today. It's the amount of assessed value only we're dealing with.
Was there any notation on 1680 Dublin?
That's item number 7.
I just see that. Thank you. Your time is impeccable.
No, just
Is that amount of assessed value? Okay, thank you. We'll just deal with the properties as they're listed on the docket today. So the first property we'll hear is 901 Gateway Road. When you're ready, Ms. Assessor, over to you, please.
So roll number 0400-725-6520, 901 Gateway Road. For the roll year 2020, we have an assessed value of $816,000. This building was built in 2016 with wall heights of 22 feet, zone M1, and has a land to plan area of 6.96. I should point out this is strictly an office building for this property. It belongs to Boardroom Concrete, and they have their, this particular building is just an office building for their offices. You see on the second page there's a sale price in 2015, which was just the land before the improvements were built. And on page 3 you can see some exterior photos, and page 4 you'll see some overhead photos. So on page 5 we have our cap rate chart. Industrial cap rates range from 5.5% to 9.8%, with 60% of our cap rates falling between 6.34 and 7.8%. You turn to the following page, on page 6, we have the income workup. So we have a total of 3,848 square feet at $12.38 per square foot. Vacancy loss of 2.5%, expenses at 2%, a shortfall rate of 3.75, an overall cap rate of 5.5%, bringing us to our value of $816,000. On page 7, I have some comparables. There's not a lot of office comparables in this region, so I have to go all over the city. They're all flex, or finished flex warehouse, which is a lot of office space, so they generate higher rents and so all my comparables are of similar size, and rents range from $12 to $15 per square foot. I believe the subject property is the newest. We have one on Lorimer Boulevard, which is 2014. Built in 2014. And I think that these rates are the comparables for the subject property. And based on that, we ask the board to confirm our value at $816,000.
Thank you. Mr. Newfeld, question for the assessor.
Page 6, your valuation is all from the model?
Yes, it is.
Well, this building is in use as an office, but the property is part of a larger complex, correct? Manufacturing facility?
Yes, they have a property next door.
Right, and even in the pictures, it indicates that product is stored in the yard on the subject property, correct?
Correct, yes.
Have you been in this facility?
Yes, I put it on the roll.
Okay, and have you been in the facility next door?
No, I have not.
But you're aware that there is no office next door in the stone, what the hell do you call this? Casting plant?
Yeah, okay, no, I was not aware of that.
And that this is an accessory use to the casting plant?
Okay.
Now, in that light, would we not look at these as perhaps a joint, a shared economic unit in some way, that one is a part of the other? Like, do you see this being put on the market to be independent of the plant?
This particular, I mean, if they were to sell, they could do it separately.
With a concrete casting plant next door?
They would probably need some office space, which is not all that difficult to put in an office.
No, okay, but just given the location that you're next door to a place that makes paving stones.
Correct.
And you have trucks going through all the time with bringing product in, hauling product out. Does that, I think that indicates a high-quality tenancy?
Are you talking for this particular property?
Yeah, for the subject property.
For the subject property?
You mean be easy to attract a high-quality tenant?
I've seen the building. It's quite nice.
No, that's not the case. The building, I wouldn't disagree with you, but the location and the neighboring properties.
I do believe that it commands the rent that we have.
Well, your comparables, though, none of them are from the neighborhood, are
No,
they?
they're not.
And from which line in the capitalization rate would this come from?
It's the lowest cap rate.
No, but what is this? Is this, if you've got this flex warehouse finish, so this comes from industrial? Oh, yeah, you've got, oh, sorry, the highlighting means that's where it came from, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so the 20th percentile is 6.34 and 80th 7.8. So you put this at the model has put this at the absolute lowest.
yes,
And so it hasn't taken into account any locational factors like this. It's just a question of age,
yeah. The age and size, yes.
age and size. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan, questions for the assessor?
Okay, so we assess this as industrial?
It's considered an industrial property, although the building itself is not industrial use. It is office for industrial property on the adjacent roll number.
That's all. Any questions?
Thank you. Ms. Linklater?
Yes, so, Ms. Caldwell, I think you said you put this on the roll,
Yes.
so you inspected the property. Can you speak to the finishings or the interior of it?
It's quite nice. It's a higher-end office property.
Okay. Page 2 of your brief, you've got a sale of land of 163. Do you have anywhere in your notes the cost of the build?
I did not include it, I did print out a permit, and this is, I don't know, I'm gonna pass it around. The declared construction value is $776,150. And that was issued in October of 2015.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. So this is classified as an industrial property because of it being adjacent to their
Yeah.
manufacturing facility?
Yeah, it's actually, then it's subclassified as a finished flex warehouse, although it doesn't really have any flex space in it. It's, finished flex has a lot, it has greater office space than a normal storage warehouse or whatnot.
And does it have anything to do with the product storage on site that makes it industrial rather than just an office building?
Not really. No. The alternative would be because some would create a separate office income stream for this.
Okay, and was there any consideration to merging the two properties if they're considered to be one economic unit functioning, this being the office for the other one?
Well, not without them merging the two roll numbers.
Right, so that has to be initiated by the owners?
Yeah.
Oh, that's new.
I may be wrong. I don't.
Okay, and that's, I think we established that this is strictly model-driven.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Let's hear from you, please.
Thank you. The error here is that it's being treated as a standalone building. It is not. It's part of the manufacturing complex. Page 2 shows both of them. To the north is the Boardroom concrete cement plant. And inside the plant, they bring in their raw product and they cast and form the generally paving stones, either decorative or sidewalk or driveway stones. The plant itself, it can't have an office function in it due to dust and other airborne issues. And a lot of the parts of it are open to the elements as well. So you have to wear breathing protection when you're in there. So the decision was made to build a standalone office for the administrative side. And I think they sell product through there as well. And you can see in the backyard that there are racks there with product and on them. So it's all part of one complex. Now, I haven't checked with them to see about the concept of a roll merger. I think that Barkman has a few operating companies, and I'm not sure if they're inclined to go that way because they may want to hold it within their company as a different entity from the manufacturing site. But I will look into it. The point is, as real estate goes, is that it is dependent on the other parcel. It's an accessory use. It would not be the least bit of interest to anybody else in the marketplace, given the noxious activities that go on to the north. The traffic, stone is heavy. Bear in mind that this is one of the few products that Canada is not going to be buying from other countries because it's too heavy to transport. So we're going to manufacture it ourselves. And so the trucks come and go. And Gateway, of course, is changing its nature. I still don't know what they're planning to do with that old rail line down the middle. Looks like it's a bicycle path here, so maybe that's where it stays. But the strip along Gateway and Raleigh on both sides has these pockets of industrial development. They're also impacted by the proximity of housing. So the bylaw in this particular case that we're concerned about is on page I was looking at the bulk zoning bylaws, page 7, and buffering, top of page 7, where the rear side lot abuts the side or rear lot of an R1, a 25-yard must be provided and landscaped. Now, in our case, because there is already looks like a former rail spur in place, that takes care of that element. However, if you've ever had the experience in your life of dealing with property planning and asking for a change in any sort of a zoning designation, you'll know that the success of any sort of change in this site is zero, because they have been in place for 50 years, 60 years. They can continue doing what they're doing. The office is an accessory to the main plant and therefore allowed, but there won't be any changes to this. So someone comes along and wants to put in something else, the residents have the right to block it, and they will, because it looks like a 60-foot right-of-way is not, the last couple of ones I've seen where residents successfully fought the buffer zones extended to 150 feet from industrial zones, including 50 feet of grass, 100 of no use, parking only. So this is an issue here, and so it'll stay as it is. What would be permitted is what's listed in the zoning on page 14 and onwards under M1, and M1 is not good for industrial user. I just wanted to see the, for example, page 15 is the accessory use. I told you this qualifies as an accessory use office, no problem there. That's generally allowed in M1, and you can see it's permitted. Principal use table would be manufacturing, and so it's a question here, and that's page 14, whether the planner would consider this light or heavy. Now, we don't have to worry about it because it's been in place, but we do have to worry about it if there's any change in use, because it won't be approved. This will be, there's a good chance that someone will classify it as heavy, because it's not all self-contained. They use the yard. So we have a site in its general configuration that is a riskier proposition for alternate use. So the world is wonderful as long as Barkman keeps doing what they're doing. The neighbors have nothing that they can say about it, and they're happy where they are. But remember, we're talking about primarily we are dealing with property rights. The we're not appraising the land, the dirt, the bricks, the mortar, lots of bricks. We're appraising the property rights, and the property rights are diminished, and it's restricted. So this user can continue to use it. The next one along cannot. Now, we've used a rent of $10 on this site, and we were looking at were sites that we knew were immediately adjacent to manufacturing sites. On page 4, 1455 and 1479 Buffalo is an example. Now, this is an older building, but they've modified parts of it, and they're now leasing it as office, and you can see what the rates are. And this was the former Pollard banknote site, and there is, surprisingly on this site, there's a brick distributor of some sort. He's got, his rent isn't in here, but he's on that campus on page 4 for 1455 Buffalo. Or is it 1479? Anyway, the rents there, as you can see, that we put a lot of weight on those. We're talking about an accessory use, so it really doesn't matter if it's new or if it's old. It's a question of the restrictions and the location. That was the closest we thought of. Top of page 3 are some, they call them flex, but these sites, the smaller ones at the top are so small that they're predominantly office. But they're in multi-tenanted buildings that have a variety of uses in them. All things considering, $10 was fair. The vacancy rate was, in this case, we looked at both office and miscellaneous. Page 5 is the investment rates. We completely disagree with the assessment department's concept of vacancy. It's not appropriate to use vacancy rates in a manner that fails to understand the product. Most all of the parameters derived from industrial, in my opinion, appear to come from a superior product, a flex-style warehouse, which is basically a glorified office that's built out with high cubes and ends up being used as an office. This is a dirty working facility, and it's accessory use office. The rates we're looking at come from the Johnson report, which I bring with me, and in it, it's got breakdowns of areas and actual vacancies of every commercial building in the city. So this is real data, not a model. So we're using 6.9. Non-recoverable, we're using a 5%, and at some point during this hearing, I do have a bunch of rebuttal information, and I should have entered it earlier, maybe in the next one. We'll see how things go about the so-called management fee, which is really non-recoverables. You've all heard it before, I believe. One new item on there, worth considering.
Actually, it wouldn't be considered rebuttal evidence necessarily, would it? If you want to make a presentation.
Right now?
Well, it would be part of your evidence, would it not?
Yeah, but I didn't give it in advance. I can only, it's a question of procedure.
You haven't put it in your brief at all?
No. Well, in the brief, we have our management study in the back, right? And that's what we've left at. But at some point, next time I'll ask a question about management so that I open the door for myself. Unless everything works out well. I just forgot. As far as structural reserve, we're using a rate per square foot, which is what it's for, which basically the structural reserve is for items that aren't covered under the lease in a typical lease application, which in this case is generally the roof and replacement, 25 cents a foot for reserve. Our shortfall is estimated at $841, and that is based on actual taxes. And herein lies another error with the model. The assessment department uses a shortfall of $375 a square foot. Now, the tax load on this building alone is $396 a foot. There's no tax forgiveness when you go vacant. So the model is incorrect. Lastly, the capitalization rate. We look at many things, and the proximity of the residential is an impact on alternate use and redevelopment. This is an accessory use to a manufacturing facility. This would not be covered in anybody's study. It's just a dirty working facility. And I use the word dirty just to differentiate. It's sort of like there are some terms in real estate I should be careful about. There's brownfield, greenfield, which means greenfield has never been developed before. Brownfield means it's a redevelopment. We use dirty, we use clean. And what that means is that clean means it's a flex warehouse with office use. Dirty means they make stuff in there. And it's a real facility. So the language isn't meant to be posturing. It's just a way in our business to separate. It's a dirty use. So the cap rates, there are a couple in here that I was just going to point out. Now, on page they start on page 34. Top of page 34 was and actually this is a investment return of 8%. That's a body shop. That's a dirty use. Then comes the slate portfolio, which is mostly it's a mix of different uses. It's office, it's retail, it's storage. Not a lot of dirty uses. Like I think they only get into warehousing. Going to page 35, there's 1535 Seal, and this was a sale of the business and real estate, and client was mine. They're 8.29%. They made windows there. You consider it a dirty manufacturing use. Moving on to 51 Aikens. That's an older building with a not a lot of land on it and not a great location, but they made stuff there. They made direct fired and indirect fired makeup air equipment. So they welded and attached sheet metal for ducting, 11%. 1436 Chevrolet, which is kind of interesting, it's the brick company. Now I'm not sure at this point if they were making bricks on their site. They were at one point. This may just be distribution, but it was a portfolio sale at 7.1%. And the other one, there were 3 properties. 2 were in Alberta and 1 was in Winnipeg. So the only report I have is the joint rate, so therefore a little less reliable. And lastly, 35 Winfield, which is I'm trying to remember what it was. Yes, this was more of a storage site, 9.48%. So all in all, our cap rate, my review is on the low side. I would think that in the market it'd be more aggressive. You have to realize that there's nothing else you're going to do with this building. It's not going to be a 7-Eleven tomorrow. Well, 7-Eleven doesn't build anymore. It's not going to be a Tim Hortons tomorrow. Not until the paving plant goes away. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Ms. Caldwell, questions for the applicant?
Your cap rate that you were just going through, 1535 Seal, that sale was in 2013. That's before the reference period.
That's correct.
And 51 Aikens also before the reference period.
That's correct.
As well as 1436 Chevrolet, 49 Adelaide, 35 Winfield.
Well, yes. I mean, a library of cap rates can extend a few years, and it's a question of deciding, as the market changed its view of manufacturing sites in that time, and most of the market information we see shows that cap rates are actually on the way up between 16 and 18, not down.
So, but you don't have any sales with cap rates from the reference period.
Well, properties like this don't generally sell. The manufacturing facilities, the investors don't want them. And this is an accessory use to a manufacturing facility. They change hands between end users generally. And the only time you see them sell is when somebody's doing a financing or raising funds for an expansion of their business, and they sell off their real estate to an investment company and do a leaseback. And those aren't the most reliable transactions. We do have a couple of those.
Okay, on your page 1, when you're going through your non-recoverables, there's no reported utilities on the I&E. Where do you get 245?
Generally with utilities, what we're using is I just have to look this over. Generally we're using the assessment department business assessment numbers. The utilities are good in a generic sense in that they even out some of the ups and downs in the market. Our buildings are all over the board for utilities. There's some with low occupancies like warehouses which run virtually nothing, and then there's some that have manufacturing equipment that run very, very high. So on a stabilized basis, we tend to use that number because we know that the 245 now rate is fair. It's at that rate because there's air conditioning in it. It would be lower without the air.
Okay. So if they had reported utilities higher than that, would you use something higher?
Not for this building, because then I would think there's they wouldn't be that reliable. Like utility stabilization is, like, I guess I can say it's one of the things that the assessment department rates seem to be fair. So yes, a lot of stuff I disagree with, but the utility rates seem about appropriate.
And
mind you, I think some of the electricity should be coming down because most of the buildings are switching to LED, and they've seen significant cost decreases.
okay,
But then you increase the water rate. Pause too long, I'll say something stupid.
page 4, moving on. Your office rent comparables, the ones you pointed out, Buffalo,
You're right.
1455, those are older buildings. Do you know the ages of them?
There's a range of ages in that building. I think how the numbering works there, which direction I'm going. Both the 55 and 79 are both collared sites. One of them is 1960s and 70s. The other one is 60s, 2012, and a new addition in 2018, and then in 19. And those are the ones that generated the higher rate. See the ones at 19,000, 19,600 feet? That's the new construction. Moved in 2014 as it was built, 1250. And those are all generally office style.
Okay, so the one that is newest has the newest rating,
Yes. That was new construction.
as is the subject property.
Yeah, but this is also in southwest Winnipeg. And without, I'm not a neighborhood racist, but real estate people want to be in southwest Winnipeg. They don't want to be in Gateway Road. Apologies to anybody who lives out there.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seeland, any questions for the applicant?
Yes, just to make sure I have my queries right here. Page 2, you have the pictures.
Yes.
Let me see, the red dot
Red dot's the subject.
says the subject building here is north at the top of the page. It's north at the top of the page.
Right.
Okay, so the actual plant, manufacturing plant,
Right.
is the building just to the right of the red dot or black dot on the red. Is that true? That's the actual plant that
The
manufacturing?
plant is to the north, yes, northwest.
Okay. Across the street is residential property here?
Yes. And that's a church to the south.
Church to the south? Okay, that's the church there?
Yeah.
Okay. South,
I don't know if it's a Mennonite church, and Barkman got away with something at all.
further south, is that homes here too? This is residential here too?
Yeah, the
Okay.
single-family homes on either side of the road.
Okay. Between the property, is that the church, the office, the plant, is that the railway space that you were referring to? Is that previous?
Yeah, well, this
space?
appears to be an old railway spur, and you
Okay.
can see the outline of the indentation on the aerial photography is great because you can always pick up where the lines were, and it's now all grassed, and the church has extended their parking lot into it. I don't know who owns it.
Okay.
Then the spur between Gateway and Raleigh, of course, was turned over to the city. Forgot what. Oh no! Didn't somebody buy it and give it to the city? Anyway, it's a bike path now.
Okay, so we have, I'll call it green space
Yes.
on both sides. Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Ms. Untitled.
Yes. Did you have a chance to inspect the property?
I've only been in it once, and that was about 2 years ago, when I was inspecting the main plant. I just walked in the door. It was a typical office retail facility, much like walking into a strip mall.
Okay. But overall, you would say it's good condition?
Yes.
Yeah. Page 4 of your, actually, I guess it's, sorry. Page 2 of your brief. I'm assuming that the houses were there before Barkman was. The manufacturing side of it.
No, Barkman was there before the houses went in. The cement plant was there first,
Okay.
and then the houses came later. I'm trying to remember, I searched this once. I think the housing was, I'd have to take a better look at it, but to me this looks like in 1980s or later construction, just looking from the air and their layout. Whereas the ones behind Raleigh, I think, were older, likely 60s. And I think the plant's been there. When did old J.R. Barkman start up? 1930? And I don't know when they opened the Winnipeg plant. 1937? I used to live beside the plant in Steinbeck.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Where did you get your tax information from to determine the shortfall?
Well, somebody.
I don't see a return on yours or the assessment.
Okay, well, this property is in, what school division is this in? River East or?
It'd be River East, I would imagine.
Yeah, or Painful. So the effective tax rate is about 2.5%, so 635,000 assessment,
No. Oh, sorry. Sorry, yes.
right? It's going to be a tax load of $15,875, and I've just divided it by 38.48, $412 a foot.
I looked up their actual tax from last year, and it was less than that.
What was the actual tax?
14,184.
14.1. 14.1.
Which is 369.
Well, I can see that.
Pretty close. And the R&M of $2 for isn't
That's-
that a little high for a building that's only a couple of years old?
Yeah, I think we based it on our own studies, and most of our properties were, like $2 is something we have on our managed sites. So the managed site would have parking lot maintenance and a lot more things. Hard to say. I mean, sure. I could see that as an estimate, it could be 25, 50 cents on the high side, but again, it doesn't take away from the point, is that the allowance of 375 is well short.
Well, they spent,
Sorry, this thing isn't the best, but it says here they spent $44,000 on maintenance and repair. So 44,000. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they lumped their taxes into there. I never checked with Corey, but well, you know what? There's another point in an office. I forgot about this. An office requires a cleaner, whereas many industrial uses don't hire cleaners. So a cleaner's going to cost you. And so no, I'm happy with $2 a foot.
Okay. And the adjustments to your cap rate, once again, those are fairly subjective when you're making the...
Well, they're an attempt to take the subjective into the objective by taking the points. And now I'm happy that you split them up, because then it gives you the opportunity to challenge each and every one of them. And that's what we should be doing. It's not about age and size. It's about many, many other factors. So there is a problem with the location and the zoning.
Okay.
So-
But building size, that's based on this being an ancillary use?
Well, building sizes, this is small. So small size is bad, not good, because you want to lease it out. You want to look for alternate users. Now, whether it be an office, an accessory use, or part of an industrial thing, it's on the small side. The economy of scale on buildings is based on the user. So if you had a strip mall that was 15,000 feet and each unit was 1,000 square feet, you would say, well, look, there you go, 1,000 square feet, small size. The point is that all of these CRUs are interchangeable. It's the 15,000 you're looking at, the ability to adapt and expand and move your space around. And that's the size we look at. So when we look at sizes that are actually physically limited to 3,800 feet, I think it's a detriment. But, you know, that's my opinion.
Okay. I thank you. Any desire for summation, Mrs. Nesson? Mr. Newfeld?
Just reiterate that this is an accessory use to a dirty operation, and that's how it should be assessed, actually.
Thank you. The property we'll deal with is 2049 Google Road. When you're ready, Mrs. Assessor, we'll have your evidence, please.
This is rule numbers 0900711500. For the 2020 rule year, we have an assessed value of $1,539,000, and I have a recommendation for this property. Based on cap rate, my recommendation is to reduce the value to $1,197,000.
Well, they said the same thing last year. I can't promise anything, but yeah, we'll accept it right now. I want to check, there's two outstanding expropriation issues that we still have never resolved, so I don't want to misrepresent you, but I don't think you've appealed it. You have two recommendations in a row.
So am I hearing that you're in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Assessor, you said that was based on changing the cap
Cap
rate
rate to 9%.
to 9%? Any questions or concerns, Mr. Seelan?
No, I don't.
Ms. Linda?
No questions.
Thank you. So nothing further than Mr. Nichol to present on this one? Thank you. Next we'll deal with 675 Washington Avenue.
This is roll number 020406-14100. For the 2020 roll year, we have an assessed value of $1,857,000. It's a one-story building built in with an effective year of 1964, 20-foot wall, and zone M1, and has a land plan area of 1.78. I actually have a recommendation just to the cap rate. I don't expect the accountant to accept this, but I would, for the record, like to adjust the cap rate. I have been to this property, and it's on a very strange kind of residential road where it's very difficult for, if you look on page 4 at the overhead view on the bottom picture, it's very difficult for trucks to get in and out of there. So I would like to adjust the cap rate to 8.5%, which brings the total assessed value to $1,639,000.
We're not in agreement with that valuation, Mr. Nichol. I'm sorry, I should say, are you in agreement?
Are you leading on? Okay. Sorry, maybe I just wanted to check one thing here. So the potential rent stays the same. Okay. And change the cap. I gotta take it back to the owner. So I can't. This one I might appeal it, but I just spotted something there that I hadn't seen before.
So you're not going to oppose the valuation that's proposed?
No, thank you.
Mr. Seelan, any questions or concerns?
Just for clarification, what were you into the cap rate?
What was I changing it to?
Yes, please.
8.5%.
8.5%. The reason for the change?
It's not easily accessible. It's in somewhat of a residential area. It's actually quite difficult to see from this photo, but I remember being there, and the owner at the time, I think it was the previous owner, he was writing to many people in government about some kind of zoning that he wanted to have changed. But to pull in off of, I think it's Raleigh, you'd have to pull it off of. It's very difficult to get
it's that
semis to
Bowman
turn.
industrial area. There's kind of a strange route to get to it.
And so, trucks had a lot of.
You don't complain about those people who write to. I like those guys.
Oh no, I'm not complaining about it. They get stuff done. Well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Lincliffe?
I have no questions.
Thank you. So nothing further to present, Mr. Nichol?
No.
Thank you.
In fact, I gave him some names and emails too.
Oh, good. I didn't have a mailer, and I noticed you were using actual.
Oh.
So
There's another one on here that I use that.
Okay, back on track here, please, for deal with 121 Gomez. Are you ready, Ms. Assessor?
Oh.
Out of
No,
order for
I
you?
just have my stuff out of order.
I'll give you a moment to organize them.
Okay. This is roll number 14000248000. For the 2020 roll year, we have an assessed value of $1,151,000. In this case, we're in agreement with the appellant's value.
What the hell is my value?
1,108,300.
No, it's not.
That's
It's poorly written, I'm sorry.
Well, I object to that. This is what was presented to us.
No,
Well, you have an opportunity to present that value if that's what your recommendation is. But the onus is on you to either support the assessed value or to make a recommendation to a new value.
I mean, my evidence supports that value.
Sorry, your evidence supports what value?
It's close to it's closer to our value, so our evidence would support.
No, our value would be land value, 400,000.
Well,
The line below is less demolition, that's to take the building off.
So you're saying that it would be a negative value, it would
Correct.
cost more to...
Correct.
So
Well, I am
if
not-
you want to proceed with your...
It's badly written, it's our fault, sorry.
all right. Well, okay. I did not include land values because our land value is way higher than 400,000. So I'll just go through my brief then.
Yeah, please do.
It's 1 to 3 stories, built in 1909 through 1955. Wall heights from 12 to 25 feet. It's zone M1 and has a land plan area of 1.57. This is owned and occupied by Richelieu Manufacturing, who manufactures workwear and safety wear. So you'll see some photos on the next few pages and some overhead on page 6. Page 8, we have an income workup. There's a total leasable area of 106,929 square feet, and we have an overall rate of $1.75. We have a vacancy rate of 12%, expenses at 2%, a shortfall rate of $3.75, and a cap rate of 9.8%, which is at the high end of our cap rate charge for our value of $1,151,000. And then on page 9, I have some rent comparables. They are all loft warehouse rent comparables in the market region, similar vintage and similar wall height, with rents ranging from $1.11 and $4.25. Based on that, we ask the board to confirm our value.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, questions for the assessor?
Yes, thank you. So valuation, is this by the model?
Yes, it is.
And that's based on an effective year of 1948?
I don't know. It has 2 years for effective year.
Well, actual has 2 on your first page. Effective, it just says 1948.
Where are you looking?
Page
First
1.
page.
Oh, okay. No, it's not, actually. It's based on, my copy is different.
Oh, okay.
1910 to 1955. When I went through
Okay.
all the building sections,
Well, what's the effective year it's based on for your value, though?
1910 to 1955.
Okay. Have you ever been in it?
No, I haven't.
No. On your pictures, where did these come from? Page 4 or 5?
Those are just photos from me.
You don't know, okay, so I see a license plate that's phased out, so this might be a Google view.
Yeah.
You don't know the date that these were taken?
No,
Were they taken for this hearing, or were they recycled from the last one?
they were taken for this hearing.
Okay. I mean, I do that a lot, I'm not saying it's anyone. I'm just wondering why in the pictures, there appears to be virtually no activity in the site, do you know?
Well, I know it's only partially occupied.
Okay. Do you know why it's only partially occupied?
I don't know.
If you had large portions of it that were decommissioned, would that change your view as to how much useful area there was?
Yes.
Okay. And your capitalization rate, does it deal with detrimental conditions, which is generally environmental issues? Do you have an input for it?
The model itself does not unless it was
Manually overridden?
manually adjusted
Right.
to.
And was this manually adjusted?
No, it was not.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan.
Based on page 1, you have an effective build year of 1948. Was there some anxious constructed year, or is this?
No, so I have a sheet here. We have a program where you take all the building sections, everything and all the years, and the area, and it comes up with an effective year built.
Okay.
And you said, I'm sorry, did you say you have 1948?
Yes.
That's what we have.
Okay, that's incorrect as well. It's 1917.
1917
Yeah.
is the effective built.
Yeah,
1917 should be effective?
yeah.
Okay.
So for clarification purposes, 1917 is the effective, so the model is based on a 1917 building?
No,
So the cap rate
you know what?
range would-
The 1948, I believe, is what somebody had adjusted it to. When I did it myself, putting in all these, 1917 is what I came up with.
But the model's based on 1948 then?
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Lindblad.
So page 8 is based on 1948 in your brief.
Yes, it is.
But you are saying the effective is 1917.
I will also point, Mr. Newfound had just inquired about this. The highest model rate is whether it's 1917 or 1902. the highest cap rate is going to be 9.8. It's up to somebody to go in, and we have a new income quality feature where we can physically adjust the cap rate. And that is what should have been done here.
Okay. But you didn't inspect the property?
No.
Do you have any indication in your brief, or in your notes, when it was last inspected?
I don't.
Okay. So you're not going to make a recommendation then? Sorry, just somewhat.
Well, okay. I could you know what, the only thing I could, first of all, I did not know that any of the building was decommissioned.
Right.
That's not in any of the notes, and as far as I could see.
Well, we took somebody through there 2 years ago.
Well, see, if it had been me doing that 2 years ago and I knew that, I would have taken that leasable area off, and I expect that an assessor working on it, learning that information, would do the same.
And deprive both of us the opportunity to re-argue it.
Exactly. So that the first thing I would do was take off that leasable area. The second thing that I would do is there's two.
But
So
I guess the point, Mr. Assessor, is you don't know what part's been decommissioned.
No.
So you can't
No.
make that adjustment.
No.
So,
I know that there's.
so you've got 12% vacancy on page 8 of your brief?
Yeah, that's actually because it's classified as a loft warehouse. All loft warehouses in the city have 12% vacancy rate.
Okay, so obviously then the vacancy on this is much higher than that, if it's been decommissioned.
Well, I think it was Ryan, but he also got the years right too, in effect, here. I see you put 1910 on here.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what we put through.
well, it would have changed if I knew it.
Okay, anyway,
So
that's all my questions.
you would either adjust it by the vacancy, or you would take that that decommissioned space out of there completely. So, and then the cap rate would probably be adjusted by 1.4%.
So then you would have to change your chart. 9.8 is the highest cap rate you show in your chart.
That's the highest model cap rate?
Model cap.
Yeah.
So there may be properties that have a higher cap rate than what's shown on these charts?
Yes. Yeah. But those have been adjusted by an assessor.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld.
Thank you. The building lot next door to it was expropriated for the Disraeli freeway reconstruction. And that lot next door with its parking and maneuvering room for trailers, the owner became very, very concerned. This was the depot for Mark's Work Warehouse, and it's a just-in-time delivery system. So in discussing with property and planning and contractors, they said very clearly, you cannot block us off. And they said, well, we got a project plan. We can't guarantee it. So they had a big, big problem. And then the other thing that happened is we began to take measurements. In 2013, we had laser measurements done at, I have 3 copies of it here, but we had 11 locations and 11 different elevations on the same location, and had laser measured. Because what we were looking to see is if was there any movement. Now, bear in mind that portions of this building are 100 years old, so if they've moved, they've already done the movement. So we had movement. And what the owner had to do was relocate. So he expanded a facility on Inkster and moved the Mark's Work Warehouse inventory to that site so that his shipping wouldn't be interfered with. The business, of course, is far more important than this building. So today what's in the building is about 45% occupied with small runs. They would call it their low volume runs, the inventory. Now, Richelieu used to make all their garments in Winnipeg, and now everybody knows, it's no secret, they're not making most of them here. Most of them will get imported from the east generally, and the west of Canada, the east, and brought to Winnipeg and redistributed here, usually to the east of Canada. And that's what this facility existed for. So it's no longer good for that. So it's not dead stock, but low stock storage, where there's a low risk of a sudden call to ship out to a facility. So the last time we toured it, I believe that was about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we went out with the assessor and we showed him all the vacated sites. For example, the northern section of it, which was a newer section, which was where most of the foundation had moved, the basement sections, and then there was another area on the east side, which is completely empty. So it's about 45% use, and the usage on it is sparse. It used to be racks upon racks with a trolley system to get them out and shipped, and the racks are about 20% full. Now, what happened during this process is, as we were going through it and we saw the movement, is because this was due to expropriation, we began the steps of figuring out how we would end up fixing it. On page 6, there's a sketch of that expropriation, and it shows how the bridges move closer. Now, most of the movement occurred during the construction process, because going down deep into the foundation, so it loosened the foundation and made the building shift. But as a result, inside the building there was shifting. Now, when we took contractors in and said, look, just give us an estimate, we want to get, the building's old, it's fine, we'll see about getting it fixed and move on. So they came into page 9, 10, and 11. At the bottom of page 9, that's asbestos. Page 10, asbestos wrap and friable asbestos. Now, this is an active, yes, I believe this was an active panel. So it had to be decommissioned. There's an on-site transformer, page 8, that probably dates from the invention of electricity. So the contractor said that in order to repair the facility, we have to clean all the asbestos out first, and you have to do it with bags, people in suits and bags, double bagging, because that's the requirement in workplace and safety health. So all of a sudden, a couple $100,000 repair bill became $2-3 million. It's just not economic to fix. So parts of the building were just decommissioned, and the use for it was declined. So it is as it is. What's in there is legal. They just diminished the space until we weren't dealing with the areas. We had 2 engineers go through it and look at the original construction and review what we had to do. And right now we haven't taken it yet to the LDAC, and there's been some issues with the lawyers handling it. Originally it was Orville Curry, then Chuck Chappell, who then retired, so I'm not sure who's handling it now. I'm the appraiser on the job. Right now my opinion is that we're probably looking at bulldozing it and looking at the land value. It's not historically protected, so that can be done. So we had an estimate on demolition, and that's what we made the error. It was $20 a foot, and that's high. I've got 2 reasons for it. A lot of masonry, and most all the product has to be double bagged because of the asbestos. And we had come up with a value of 200,000 an acre, so you can see there's a negative value of 700,000 is what we're carrying right now. Now, we could argue that the land could be worth more, maybe it is. It's still going to be a negative value. But the owner at the time is still able to use part of the space. So on the income approach, I don't know how you would do it. Take a building and say, just, you know, the minute you get to past 15-20% in a vacancy application, the highest and best use no longer exists, because the income approach isn't designed to deal with high vacancy. So one of the things we've done in other sites across the country is we've actually said, let's hypothetically ignore half the building and then just apply the valuation to the remaining part of it as a bit of a compromise situation. And that's something that we're looking at. You know, applying very high vacancy is going to lead to a negative value too, because the shortfall gets so high, it wipes out all the income. So I guess we should have talked about this property before on the issues on it, and maybe come up with a solution. But I don't have a number. I can suggest land value. We're putting it 400,000. Another potential way of looking at it is, silly as it sounds, is say, okay, let's look at your valuation and just cut the square footage in half to the useful square footage, and come out and look at it just to verify that that's the case. But so last year the board did that, and it was 390,000. Previous years we had just an arbitrary amount of 500,000. One year it was 700,000. We've never appealed it because that's not the point here. The point is just some recognition, and we're going to move on. We're getting some use out of it. So an alternative is, I would suggest cut the assessor's value in half for the unusable space, which is higher than half, but it's a Solomon number. Other than that, we're sticking with land value. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Assessor, questions for the applicant?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan?
None from me, Mr. Chair.
Good letter.
Yeah, just, sorry, I think Mr. Neufeld, you stated that some of it is being used?
Yes. The first and second floor near the west side dock is being used.
As
Okay, I'll show you the pictures. The overhead is best. Page 12. So the wider roof here is being used. Carrying on this way, this whole section is not being used. This whole section is. Do you want me to see?
that's okay.
Let me show you this. Okay, so this section is being used. This section here and here is not being used. This section is partially used. The owner has a couple of cars in the basement, and there's an organ there, and I really like it. But that's my life. This is the section here that has a foundation all along here. That's breaking. So they're not using the majority of the space here. This is not being used because it was set up as a garage of some sort, and this is being partially used here as a walkway to connect. So what happened is that there's these overhead rail systems that run like this, and so this was on it, so they use it run through here. So it's mostly this section right here that I would consider being used, and so they have docks here. The docks here are all gone.
So what is it being used as?
They have this overhead trolley system for clothing. They hang the clothing on this thing, and they store it. So when they have a call for it, they have a system that they can transfer from one overhead rail to the other and move racks of clothing and bring them down to the shipping area and bring it out or bring them in. So it's, and it'd be like heavier work items, like jackets, heavier jackets. And then in the basement of that section, there's an area where boxed goods are being kept. So that's all in that first section.
That's it. Thank you.
And that's, did you say the first and second story of that portion that's being used?
Correct, and it's parts of that basement.
Is it just a two-story portion then? Because I know there's one-story, two-story, three-story portions.
No, there's not three. There's one. It's two-story. One. Some is one, some is two, and then there's some basement. There's some different elevations along the way. Like this place I mentioned down here, where it was a garage. It's got different elevations, but it's still two-story.
And the asbestos is only in part of the property?
Well, the main part of it is right here.
Okay.
And that's where those, the really graphic pictures of the duct is.
And then that's probably the early 1900s construction then?
No, asbestos didn't come into use until later on. This section is newer, and that's when they put it in.
Oh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it was more prevalent in the 70s, I guess. 67?
About 50, it started to, like, they were using asbestos in cement tiles in late 50s, early 60s, and from then it started to go down, but I thought it was World War II age stuff, that asbestos became more popular. No, this section along here was rebuilt in '48, and that's because the track down here caused foundation problems, so they rebuilt it and repoured it. And this is an older section. Anything around the courtyard, see the courtyard here in the middle is open, and it was originally designed you could drive in here into the courtyard, and then later they filled it in, and then they added buildings.
Okay, there's no consideration of putting this property on the market?
I think it's like, what's the point of selling it? It's better to have a building that you can occasionally use for backup than get rid of it, because you know, the carry costs to the business. This is a large business.
Okay. So on that basis, there is some value to this property?
Exactly. We're not disagreeing that there's some value.
Can I ask one more question?
You may.
I'm sorry. Page 1 of your brief, you've got an assessment previous, you said that was board ordered for 390,
That's correct.
but you don't have a copy of the board order in here? Or did I miss it?
An engineer and an appraiser. I don't know if they are.
You're aware of that order, Ms. Caldwell?
Yes. Thank you, that's all my questions.
I have nothing further. Desire for summation on this property?
As I said before, I think you have two alternatives. I hope you have two alternatives. One is to look at land value. The second would be a very Solomon-type decision, cut the old assessment in half to account for areas. Application of a higher vacancy rate will bring a lower value than that. We've done it Brandon Mall and Portage Mall, where we had obsolete old malls, and yet there was a big box store that was still active, and the deal we made with the assessor was, how about let's just forget about it. We're losing $100,000 on this, just take it off the books, forget it exists. And I know it's a bit creative, but you don't get a property like this often.
Thank you.
By the way, that's what Don Mitchelson did 8 years ago. He just cut it in half.
Yeah, this one's deeper cut than 50%.
Well, he started at $1 million last Don.
Yes. At this point, we're going to take a brief break, 10 minutes, please. All right, I'll call the hearing back to order. Point now, the next property we'll deal with is 175 Sutherland Avenue. So when you're ready, Ms. Assessor?
All right. This is roll number 140078800. For the 2020 roll year, we have an assessed value of $1,263,000. I do have a recommendation for this property. And that is a reduction in the rent from $6.37 to $5.47.
$547.
Yeah. For a new assessed value of $1,078,000.
What does that make your potential income then?
$101,638. I have a workup here.
No.
You have a workup?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I'm totally at a loss here. Well, again, I guess we should have talked earlier. We'll take it for now and then. No promises, but go ahead.
So you're in agreement with the valuation at this point?
Yes, that's it.
Any concerns or questions, Mr. Seal?
No, Mr. Chair.
Slide letter. Thank you. Next we'll deal with 2800 Saskatchewan.
All right. This is roll number 07439044000. For the 2020 roll year, we have an assessed value of $1,031,000. This is a finished flex warehouse with an effective year of 1979, 15-foot wall height. It's zoned M2 and has a land plan area of 10.10. There was a 2010 sale for $800,000. It says no subject leases. There are some leases in place. There's a combination of net and gross leases that are included in the income and expense waiver on page 13. So page 3, you see some exterior photos, and page 4, there are some overhead photos. Now I'll go to the income workup on page 6. So we have a total leasable area of 10,452 square feet with an overall rate of $6.45. Vacancy loss at 2.5%, expenses at 2%, shortfall rate of $3.75, a cap rate of 6.4. We then have an additional building value. There is an antenna on the property, a Rogers antenna, for $40,000, giving us our value of $1,031,000. On the following page, I have some rent comparables. All comparables are similar flex warehouses, similar vintage with lower wall heights, with rents between $6 and $8.50 that support our rent of $6.45. And I believe that's all. Based on our evidence, I ask the board to confirm our value at $1,031,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, questions?
Page 6, this is all done by the model.
Yes, it is.
And when you have an additional building value, if someone has to input that, then
Sorry?
the additional building value then would be a manual input?
When it was put on the roll, it was put on as a detached structure.
Okay.
Yeah, so
it's a carry forward of some sort then?
Yeah, it comes up, it's done by cost.
Okay. And have you been out to the site?
I have not.
Now, the last time I checked, there was no civic sewer or water to the site.
That's not correct any longer. I don't know when it went in.
Right.
However, I did take some screenshots.
Okay, and I did say the last time, which was 2 years ago.
Oh,
So
it
if you-
wasn't, we had water bills dating back to 2005 here. So.
Okay, and sewer. So you're showing now that it's serviced?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Likely part of the Centerport modifications in the neighborhood then?
I'm not sure, but I know that they have, again, a water bill dating back to 2005.
So do you mind if I see the water bill? Or do you have it?
Yeah. This is the last, we don't get this information anymore. We got it from last time in 2009, but
Oh, okay.
that was,
So there's a sewer charge and a water charge.
yeah. But there is,
Yeah, no, I've been working in Centerport. I know that they were trying to extend services, and the problem they always have is crossing the tracks and with the rest of Centerport. And do you know what goes on in the site?
I know there's a wood product tenant in
Right.
there, and there's the Department of National Defense.
Okay. And a cell tower.
Yes.
And did you have an opportunity to look at their statement provided by their accountant?
I did, yes.
The income's a little bit different than yours, is it not? I know you have to make an adjustment for the interest and the amortization.
Right, yes.
Which is 32,000. So there are approximately 69,000 potential.
So removing the amortization and interest expense, their NOI is 79,455.
Okay. And access to this site is crossing an active railway crossing, correct?
Correct.
I think that's a last property we talked about Washington, and you did your research and you thought it was hard to get trucks in. Now, are there any concerns about having the legal approach crossing a rail line?
I mean, Washington, I don't know what the legal approach, like whether or not it's difficult to get vehicles in here, I don't know. What does that, if that has something to do with the rail?
Well, yeah, I mean, the rail line has of course, the right to deal with the crossings, because it is their land. But there was nothing done for that in the evaluation assessment form.
No.
And the cap rate chosen was at the close to the 20th percentile.
That's correct, yes.
And that's for a building built in 1963, irregular shaped, crossing a railway line. Okay. Here's my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan, questions for the assessor?
Yes, how did we arrive at the initial building value of 40,000? How did we come up with
For the,
40,000?
so it's done on cost, it's, yeah. So we have, I don't know how to read this very well. Replacement cost new of the structure is $65,972,000. Sorry, 65,972. Less normal depreciation, 39% is 40,000.
Any further, Mr. Seelan?
No, thank you. Thanks.
Ms. Linkletter?
No questions, thank you.
Do you know anything about the 2010 sale?
It appears on point, that's all. We didn't have a sales mailer, it was investigated by title.
Okay. And the additional building value, I just want to follow up on that a little bit. Did you say that was a replacement cost new or a reproduction cost new? It's from the Marshall and Swift valuation?
Yes.
And is that how all the, I'm assuming it's a cell tower, it's Rogers?
Yeah.
And all the cell towers that are on private property are assessed
Yes.
on the same method?
Yeah.
And was there any investigation as to what the income was generating?
No.
No. And I think you said the valuation was model driven
That's correct, yes.
and based on a 1979 effective year.
Yes.
Was there an addition at some point, or was there major renovations done to change it from 63 to 79?
I'm not sure.
And with 63 versus 79, would that have different cap rates?
I don't believe so.
It's in a grouping where you would apply the same
Yeah.
cap rate? Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, here to me, please.
Sorry, I just was trying to track down some information. Subject property is 3 users on the site, and user number 1 is the DND, and they rent the building. User 2 is the owner, who's got a small office space in the building of 1,600 square feet with, and then uses the outside land. And user 3 is Rogers. I do have the Rogers rent. It's $800 a month. And I noticed in their statement that they didn't provide a breakdown of any of these costs. And the owner's rent is included in year 2, which they've plugged in their own number of $2,000 a month for what it matters. It doesn't. And the balance of it is a D&D rent. So that's 96, 33.6. So $69,000 is D&D. And $24,000 is the owner paying himself. But we do agree on the income, so we're close to each other, and no much point debating that. This comes down to the issues of vacancy, management expense, shortfall, and capitalization rate. And on the vacancy side, we were looking at St. James area. Each part of the city of Winnipeg on the industrial world will have a very, very different vacancy rate. And Murray Park, as you note, where this would be, has a vacancy rate of 0. And that's not because that it's a great location. It's because there's 2 users in there to buy everything that comes up. They're expanding their own production facilities, Winnipeg and MacDon. And there's very little industrial investment in this particular neighborhood. So it's an anomaly, and we wouldn't look at it. We've looked at St. James, but basically you look at the overall city of Winnipeg rate in this case at 7.2% for investment. And that's shown on page 6, the excerpt from the Johnson report. The non-recoverables in this case, as the statement indicates, the amount of non-recoverables are quite large, and they're all laid out. Now we are disregarding, obviously, the expenses we discussed, and on my page 3, we're disregarding an interest expense and an amortization expense, but they have a rental expense of $9,000. And that's for airport land. because we're on the Queen owns land in this area. So they are paying outside rent for their site, non-recoverable. And the work that went on in this, by the way, was inconsequential. It was interior renovation for D&D's use. Years ago, this was a body shop owned by Birchwood, and then this company purchased it and they rented it out to D&D. I don't think I'm allowed to tell you what they do in there because it's national security and everything, but I did tour the site. It's more to do with search and rescue and equipment storage and a place for the Sartex to hang out when they're not out in the field. Being by the airport, it's a good location for them. So it was limited to drywalling the interior and refinishing many of the areas and putting in new garage doors to get their equipment in and out. So there's no change in the effective age. Effective age means that you're doing major renovations. It doesn't refer to interior work on the site. But then the other issues are the same. Now, when we get to cap rate, our concern there was, I was aware that they were working on the sewer and the water. The person who wrote this was not. So obviously, we would not be as aggressive as 9%. I would think 8.5% should be where we were at. Nobody gave me a calculator. Except Ellen. So that's 608,624, rounded to 609,000. The approach is controlled by, I don't know which one this is, CN or CP, but they control that approach. And on page 2, it shows you the neighborhood and how each of these uncontrolled railway crossings are subject to controlled by the rail line. Now, in one of my clients bought a piece of land on the far right and bought the land, a great deal on it, thought it was wonderful, and then found out that he couldn't get access to his site. Spent another couple $100,000 buying access to cross the rail line. So it's governed by federal regulations. It's not a good location in that respect, so it's not, I guess, what you'd consider a good conventional investment risk across the rail line. And the location has improved with the work being done in Centerport. But the transportation routes here had always been in place down Saskatchewan. They've now been replaced by Saskatchewan being diverted to Canada Way. However, it's still an old body shop and with poor location and a triangular, poor access and a triangular configuration of its land, which limits the utility of the land. One of the points I would like to point out when people look at triangular lots is when you look at zoning on the site, in M2 zoning and the setbacks on page 7, where corner yard, minimum corner yard is 15 feet and front yard is 25 feet. So if you're on a triangle and you have a 25-foot yard setback and you're in the triangle, it means that even less of your land can be built on or put a building on. Both of the lots lines are now considered side yards. But of course in M2 that doesn't matter, there's 0. One is a corner side yard, actually, the long one, because, and then the other isn't. So you can see where the building is sited is about the only place you can build a building, and so that's the downside on the triangular piece is the setbacks limit your use of the land, as well as what's the major reason people have industrial properties is semi-trailer maneuvering, and it just makes it harder to maneuver. So those are the issues that we had looked at, and we think the value is fairly $609,000. Now, when the person bought it, he bought it for his own use. He was hoping to bring his pallet storage business here, and as it turned out, it wasn't a good fit for him. So that's when he turned around and made the deal to lease the building to D&D and just use it for a part of his business operations. The last assessment at $886, and everyone before it was always a recommendation from the assessment department. Not that that matters today, but I was just bringing up that that's how the last one was created. We accepted it. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Caldwell, questions for the applicant?
You said you accepted value the previous cycle for 886, yeah, and now you're asking for 575. Why a huge drop?
That's because the owner stopped using the building and had got a lease. He just didn't. It wasn't working for his utility. Well, we've been out to visit the site several times, and it's a gravel yard. I'm just trying to remember here. Oh, you know what? I didn't put the Rogers income in there. I knew there was something else. I'm stalling here. Yeah, that should be another $9,600, which even at $10,000, because I'm going to be real lazy here and cap that with the rest is kind of where my your calculator back. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's an additional $112,940. I knew I was forgetting about something. Okay, sorry, my value should be $721,565 rounded to $722,000.
It's quite large.
And actually, just let them know that we can hear their deliberations.
It's like their money's on the line.
Do we keep going or no?
No, we're going to just wait until they... Actually, no, go ahead.
Yeah, no,
Continue.
sorry about that. Yeah, $722,000. It's a small difference, and that was just because he abandoned his plans and took a lease and moved on.
Thank you. Anything further, Ms. Hester?
Okay, again, I'm just looking at your values at the bottom, vacancy for your non-recoverables. Tax, you have a rate of $2.45. What tax is that based on? If you use their 2017 value that they put in their I&E, it would come to $195. They reported taxes of $20,340.
Well, I'm glad you're watching us. Yeah, I think you're right. Oh, well. Yeah, I get $195.
And utilities, again, you just used the VA?
Yeah, without air conditioning. Because actually there is air conditioning in it now. For the D&D part of the space. Yeah, so that's a 50-cent difference, so that's gonna change, change my number slightly.
They also report their utilities as $12,382, which equals $118 per square foot per utility.
Rogers is on their own meter. I don't know that. In this case, we ended up using the city just to be consistent. No, I don't think I'm going to change that. It's just that you're going to have high properties and low properties. Some stabilization is required. Next time we meet, and we'll have a restaurant and the utilities are $7. I'll still use $2.45 a square foot because it has to be some market number for an appraisal purpose that you should rely on.
So R&M, you use that across the board for?
Generally, yes. In our business, it's pretty standard, as I said. Sometimes you'll have maybe have a nice new building, but then maybe you have to pay for office cleaning. And sometimes you'll have ones that require a lot of upkeep, a lot more snow plowing, like this one. Now, in this case, not sure if the contract calls for D&D to do their own snow clearing. So that would be something that would come back to the owner. So it is an expense on a shortfall basis. Because a shortfall, you're assuming vacant, so someone's got to do it. That's right, I'm fine with that.
Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Seymour?
Just for clarification, this property is fully accessible by roads and stuff. There's no encumbrances, like everything's accessible.
Yeah, you can
It's
get
fully
in.
accessible.
It's accessible, yeah, across a rail crossing, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lindberg?
Yeah, just one question about your vacancy, because you've got it at, on page 1 of your brief at 7.3%.
Correct.
But how long has DVD been there? Or D&D?
I was there when they moved in, and I was out there with an assessor. Just want to see what the records. – 2014.
And previous to that, was it vacant?
Yeah, it was, the owner was using a part of the space, but the majority of it was vacant.
So are you putting a premium on the vacancy because of the location?
No, I'm using the Johnson report, which is an industrial vacancy report for the city of Winnipeg, and I'm applying the overall rate. And I gave you the excerpt of that, and the investment vacancy rate, which is 7.2%. I think it's put in at 7.3, but it should be 7.2. But that is the vacancy rate as of the end of 2017 in Winnipeg's industrial investment. And as I mentioned, some properties were high, some areas were high, some were low. But that's the overall rate.
Thank you.
So you had made a comment that Murray Park is being absorbed, any vacancies being absorbed by two major owners that are,
Right.
so that wouldn't have any effect on your vacancy determination?
No, because it doesn't reflect the investment market, because it's not going to happen. It's outside, it's an end user. And just also to give you an idea of the size of the inventory, Murray Park is 374,000 square feet, according to this. But actually, no, that's not true, because they don't have MacDon in here. With MacDon, it's about 1 million square feet. Oh, sorry. This is the investment vacancy. That's correct. And investment vacancy is 374,000 square feet. And compared to St. James as an example, is page 9 million. So it's too small a sample size to put any reliability on.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly not suggesting a zero vacancy.
No,
but you don't think it would be tempered by the fact that that is the economic circumstances in that particular area?
well, generally, yes, if it were on the south side of the tracks. And why, sorry, sometimes I'm a little slow in the brain right now. If you think of Murray Park, when you come in off Moray, and you have Cree and Salto and all those streets, yeah, anytime something comes up, it's going to sell right away. MacDon's going to buy it, and the last one, Winnipeg, bought a site the minute it came up and it was available, because they need to expand. MacDon, and I work for them, they purchased 4 pieces of land in the past 5 years. Most of them are south of the tracks. These are north of the tracks. So when they bought the land here, they thought, oh, wonderful, this is a close door site, it's zoned, we can put our equipment storage there. And then they found out that they had no access. And by the time they developed access, they found that they couldn't use it, they couldn't develop it, they couldn't build on it anymore. 2800 Saskatchewan has a grandfathered right to develop from 1963. So they could continue to use their building and adapt it, but MacDon couldn't put a new structure on their building. And because that's one of the issues with the rail crossing and the control of the land nearby by Winnipeg Airport Authority. They ended up doing a trade with HMQ on their land and some other land. So HMQ now owns this land. So it's an artificial area north of Saskatchewan where I think one could even argue the vacancy could be horrific, because it's outside the control area, or outside the, there are other controls on it. It's not the same. So it's just a little bit of an orphan piece. If you think about Winnipeg's got a bunch of these. There's a small enclave in Transcona off Plessy, Valdy, where there's like this, or there's Melnick Road, which is an MR, a former MR zone off the perimeter. And you come across these every once in a while. And you're kind of doubting where do we, or for example, Raleigh and Gateway, the little pieces on the other side. Does that belong in a greater industrial park like St. B, St. James? Is it governed by the same market forces? And I say no, there's external ones. So it just makes it troubling to find a vacancy. We know now, for example, MacDon will walk in and buy your land, but they won't buy this. So the answer would be no, I have to put something on it, so I just picked the overall rate.
Okay, thank you. Desire for summation? Mr. Neufeld? Thank you. Continue on, 1680 Dublin, next property building.
This is roll number 07016696. $3,000,000. For the 2020 cycle, we have an assessed value of $3,851,000. It's a one-story building built in 1988 with wall heights from 20 to 23 feet. It's zoned M2 and has a land to plan area of 2.82. You'll see on page 2 there are several leases in place. This is a finished flex warehouse property. And on page 3 you can see some exterior photos, as well as page 4 and some overhead photos on page 5. So when you come to the income workup on page 7, we have a total leasable area of 38,672 square feet. It's broken into several business premises. The overall rent is $7.04. We have a vacancy loss of 4%, expenses of 2%, a shortfall rate of $3.75, a cap rate of 6.5%, bringing us to our value of $3,851,000. I'd also like to point out that our rents are not model; these are the actual rents in place from the leases. Turning to the following page 8, several rent comparables. All comparables are finished flex warehouses in the subject neighborhood with similar wall heights, with rents between $6.75 and $9 per square foot to support our rates as well. And based on that, we ask the board to confirm our value today at $3,851,000. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Sorry, now, you're saying that the calculation, page 7, put in actual rents rather than model rents?
Yeah.
Okay, and any other changes from the model?
No.
So are they to be the rents listed on page 14?
I believe so.
Now, this adds up to $272,000. There's no vacancy indicated on either page. The statement has a value of $265,000. So, do you know where the difference came from?
Okay, can you go over that again?
Okay, sorry. Your number on page 7 says $272,000 total income.
Yeah.
Right. And page 12 says it's $265,000. Page 14 does not indicate a vacancy. So there's a slight difference, is there not? And none of the leases on page 14 are new. They've all been in place. Just wondering where I think it's about a $7,000 difference.
Is there any? I don't know, other than I would have to go through and add up their space and make sure it corresponds to our space. We may have a premise or premises that are vacant that are not on this.
2 units lower. It seems to be the same number.
Yeah.
And the step-ups don't factor in because you use the correct number at the time. Oh, wait, there it is.
Could it be that the statement ends December 17 and the first one is
Yes.
February 18?
That's going to be my guess, yeah. So that was a step-up as of February 18. Okay, yeah, no, that probably makes sense and would answer my question. You don't have to agree with it or not. I was just trying to figure that out. Now, if you're using the actual income, then why didn't you use the actual expenses?
We can't alter that.
Okay, because they have recoveries of $156,000, but expenses of almost $192,000. So they do have a shortfall in recoveries. So wouldn't it make sense if you're going to use one method, which is actual rent, that you've got to use the whole thing?
In this case, we can adjust that.
Okay. So you're mixing methods then, right?
Well,
I mean, your model could have been lower.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. And who decided to put in the actual rents here?
One of our associations.
Okay. So their net income without a vacancy is $231,000, and yours with a vacancy adjustment is $250. Correct?
Yes.
And was the cap rate that being from close to the 20th percentile based on age and size and everything else?
Yes.
What about the land plan area? Does that come into it?
Not into cap rate, no.
Those are my questions, thank you. Oh, no, wait, I do have one more. You'd said you weren't sure what, do you know which assessor made the changes? Because I think you were the last one who worked on this job 2 years ago, correct?
Yeah, we also have, when we have large increases, we also have, we go over anything above, that's increased over or under 20%, and we can adjust if we feel necessary, and so somebody adjusted these rents.
Okay, because in previous years you had noted an error and made a recommendation, correct?
Sorry?
In previous years you had noted an error and made a recommendation,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan?
Have you seen the space
I have.
recently?
Yeah.
Recently? Yeah. This property is the property that's located on page 5. Is it both photos or is it just one photo?
Is it?
2 photos.
Oh, there's actually three.
3 photos?
Three buildings?
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah. I'd say they're average for the age.
They are.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lindquist?
I have no questions, thank you.
So the potential rent was done on an override but everything else was done well.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, please.
Thanks. So we followed the statement in our workup, and the only thing we added was the vacancy risk. So I didn't prepare this. I'm sure that's stated for the record. The net income as full is $231,000, and with the vacancy, which is we applied 7.3 for a citywide rate, and you know, you can decide if you like that rate or you don't like that rate, but that's $19,000, and then the shortfall on that works out to $20,000, and that's then our structural reserve, other whatever you want to call it, is another $10,000. So that should be our difference, our total difference of approximately $50,000 between the statement number of 231 and the number we're giving you of 182. Only changes. We have recategorized the shortfall in recoveries as a non-recoverable item. It's an actual non-recoverable item. You know, we can hear the argument about 5% all day long, but this is an actual statement. This is the way this property is run. Now I know sometimes some board members, and I'm biting my tongue here because I didn't want to say anything about it, but I think I had this hearing a couple of days ago where it appeared that board members couldn't read a statement. So I'll be more patient and talk slower. I promised Visa I was going to say something. This is what they're making. You can't go to the assessment department, take half of the statement and another method, two different methods, and mix it together. They're making, with the vacancy risk thrown in, net income $182,000. The people who did this capped it at 9%, and they've relisted their reasons on the side. And I'll leave that to the board to determine if you believe that's fair or not. And that's my presentation.
Thank you. Ms. Caldwell, questions for the applicant?
Okay, again, I'm looking at your costs. Again, the tax rate is different than what I'm coming up with. You have a tax rate on page 4 of $75,267. Yet the tax rate here is $2.07. It should be $1.95.
Let me just double check something, because there were some changes in the assessed values, some appeal costs and things like that. I don't know if they did. 7.9. So I get a tax rate that's actually about $80,000. So I am wondering if there was a credit put into there. The actual tax would have been $80,000. I don't have the bill here.
Well, if they've reported $75,000,
Yeah. Well,
you said these are their expenses, these are their, and then their utilities, they report as $88,949, yet you're using BA utilities.
Well,
but
a lot of these units are separate metering.
Okay.
So they're not going to be an accurate number. That's, again, one of the reasons we're looking for a more consistent method. We don't know which units pay for their utilities and which ones don't. We don't go to that depth. This would be a good example not to use theirs. But, I mean, I can see your point on the shortfall. In this case, you know, by necessity, this is a Collier's managed property, so we would certainly want to reflect what Collier's have done. Hydro, $2,200. That's parking lot. Everybody's separately metered, so that's not the right number to use.
all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan.
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Licklider.
Yes, so, Mr. Neufeld, you've been in this property?
Yes, a few years ago.
Okay. And can you speak to the condition?
I think it's consistent with its age. Sorry, my hesitancy was, I should explain. I'm not unable to give you any opinions of my own on this property. There's a outside litigation, and so I'm merely here to present on this property.
Can you just tell me the cross street on Dublin?
I think it's I can't remember the name of it.
Thank you.
Does anybody look at
Yeah.
it?
Border.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to speak to the access issue?
I can only guess that the person who wrote this was concerned, if you look at the picture on page 2, is the lack of semi-trailer maneuvering room on the interior bays. Appears to me that this was set up with car access, what is car access on the outside, and then in the center it's supposed to be semi-trailer loading. And to give you an idea of that space, there are several trailer-only parked beside it in the property next door. And if you imagine them lined up side by side, it would be very difficult to get through. That would be the complaint.
Thank you.
So I think you addressed the non-recoverables,
Yes.
and they're like 14%.
Yes.
And the recoveries of 157,410 is from,
Where you're applying the adjustments to them. I don't know.
no, I'm looking,
I was looking at 156 for recoveries, not 157, because oftentimes the adjustments are prior period, and we don't know for sure where they apply to. They're typically, it'd be like a statement gets produced at the end of fiscal year, and you compare actuals, and they have to pay back tenants or charge tenants more money for certain things, so you never look at those.
right, no, I'm just looking at your bottom, how you determine that, page 1.
Oh, I didn't do it. Oh, I see, that person who did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, they should have used 156.
And expenses of 191 or
Right there on page 4.
191,811.
Yeah.
So there's a shortfall, $7.30 on 7.3% vacancy. Right, so that's like a $20,000 amount.
Yeah, but that's an additional shortfall if you have a vacancy.
Right.
Remember, this place is full. So that shortfall you're looking at is a natural. Basically, we have, it's a semi-gross rent situation. You can look at it that way, or you can say it's a net situation with costs falling outside the leases. No, it's not a duplication.
Well, I don't mean,
I mean, the assessor's comment on, because remember, a shortfall is a hypothetical allocation as if you're vacant.
Right.
Now, she made a comment that perhaps we have our taxes too high. I take that's a good statement. That's, it could make a slight adjustment. It's not going to make $5,000 on 38,000 square feet. It's going to be,
minimal, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Desire for summation, Ms. Caldwell?
No.
Mr. Newfield, summation on this one?
I hope you appreciate my being cheeky as possible, but I was talking about you.
You were talking about this.
Yes, I was.
I certainly hope you weren't.
This is a statement. Please look at the statement.
Oh, okay. Next, we'll deal with 2486 Ferry. Are you ready, Ms. Susser?
All right, this is roll number 05001490-100. We have an assessed value of $516,000. We would like to accept the applicant's value.
Does that mean I get a job too?
So you're making a recommendation to reduce it to what amount?
$449,000.
Okay, and that's based on the applicant's evidence?
Yes.
Mr. Newfield, I'm assuming you're going to want to accept that?
No way. Let's fight. I don't know. What can I say?
I don't know, is there a statement here?
Nothing.
Mr. Chairman, I have 5 minutes left.
Let's just see if the panel has any
Oh, okay.
Any-
Sorry.
questions, concerns?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, we will take a short break.
Thank you.
6:40, can't have a minute. Okay, the next property we'll deal with is 640 King Edward Street.
This is roll number 0700-187-0000 for 2020 assessment cycle. We have an assessed value of $913,000. It's a one-story building built in 1956 with wall heights of 16 feet. It's zoned M2 and has a land to plan area of 2.30. On page 2, you'll see there's a lease in place. It is not fully met at $6.95. You'll see some exterior photos and some overhead shots on page 4. It is leased by Fitness Experience. And then I will go to page 6 to the income workup. We have a total leasable area of 12,325 square feet at $5.20 per square foot. 4% per vacancy, 2% expenses, $3.75 shortfall rate, and a cap rate of 6.4, bringing us to our value of $913,000. I have some rent comparables on page 7. All comparables are in the subject neighborhood with lower wall heights, with rents between $4.85 and $8.25, which support our table rate of $5.20. And based on that, we ask the board to confirm the value today at $913,000. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Page 6, is this by the model?
It is.
Okay. And you've got this in at towards almost the lowest, or at the 20th percentile for cap rate
Yes.
for 1956 construction,
Yep.
and no adjustment for the land plan area.
No.
Would this be really an industrial property? I mean, I know it's in your portfolio, but Fitness Experience, isn't this retail?
Could fall under retail.
And if it had been done that way, would you expect to see a different valuation?
I imagine so, yes.
Are you aware of the shared heating plant?
No, I
On
am not.
page 4. See, there's the bottom picture. There's some looks like some things coming out of the building.
Yep.
Now, the next property on our docket today, 620, same owner. And I know we're not there yet, but page 4 of that one shows the other side of it. So you didn't know that they share a heating plant?
No.
Would that be of some concern for its marketability?
Yes.
Thank you, those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Seeland.
So is this, sorry,
No,
so is this space fully leased or is it partially leased?
It is fully leased.
Fully leased? Is it just a one tenant or is it
It's
two tenants?
just one tenant.
One tenant. So you had a cost of $530 per rent. Now, subject to leases out of 65 here. There's here. Difference here? Or did I mistake?
Sorry?
I'm sorry, it says 695 here
Yeah.
on page 2. Okay. Cost of rent was $520.
Yeah, that's a model rent.
Model,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. Thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Ms. Linklater.
Yes, did you have a chance to inspect the subject property?
I haven't been there this cycle, but I have been there a few times.
Okay. Can you speak to the condition, considering the age? 64 years old? 63? 64 is 2020.
Yeah. Say it, for the age, it's an average condition for its age.
Just curious, page 2 of your brief, you've got the sale history, and I realize it's 2003. But was that an arm's length?
I actually didn't look at this sale, just because of the age.
Yeah. Just curious because of the amount. Anyway, okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Any questions? Mr. Neufeld, we'll hear from you, please.
Thank you. On the last question asked, you should probably look at 620 King Edward on the sale. They were sold together. There's another one for 900. So the site is in use for a fitness experience. Purchased with the one immediately to the south. They have one heating plant, and I can't remember which building it is in. But that's the way it was designed. They were sold as a package. And the one to the south, which is next on our docket, is actually the owner's got space in there himself. This is fully leased out, fully arm's length statement, page 3. I'm very deeply involved with helping this particular owner on his endeavors. So this was a good deal for a rental rate for him, what he's getting, good recovery for him. Now on page 3 it shows his NOI is 43.5, and you'll note that there's 14,000 maintenance and repair. What we did with that number is we took it out because maintenance and repair can often be one-time things, and then so we ended up with a net income of 57,000. That's our difference, and then we reinserted only a portion of it, which is called stabilization, in the non-recoverables. So hypothetically, the non-recoverable on this property would be $14,000 in this particular year, or about 20%. And we've stabilized it at $3,000 in our statement. So everything else flows through the same as the other ones. We're using a real vacancy rate. And in this case, some consideration should be given to the retail. I would think that, I didn't prepare this. I'm quite willing to weigh in on this. The City of Winnipeg retail vacancy is at 6.5%. This would be considered more of a miscellaneous style vacancy because it's off-site. And St. James vacancy also, St. James was at 7.5%, but that was influenced by, this is what's great about, I love talking about vacancy rates and paying attention to them, because in St. James the rates were higher, which we didn't use that number, and the reason why is because we have the backup material we can check. It's because of Sears. Throws one thing throws an anomaly into it. So you don't not only not use anomalies when they're too low for you, you also don't use them when they're too high for you. And that's just an extra bit of due diligence we have gone through this year. So the 7.3% is a good indication. It's an old industrial building that's been repurposed to sell fitness equipment. And because I'm in such great shape, I buy all my stuff there now. Quality and condition, it's vintage. Very few changes have been made to the site, and if you look at the picture, you'll note another thing. There's no barrier-free access. You go up the stairs to get into the site, so it's at dock height. That's to deal with that issue. When we're going to the cap rate side, and again we have the issues with the age and quality and condition. It doesn't have the amenities of a modern retail facility. Being at that's one that I can point out to you. And of course, it's no longer adequate for the industrial usage because it just won't fit a semi-trailer anymore. That's why it was made obsolete in the first place. It just was just too small to deal with the industrial trade, more suited to a retail usage. And this is the rent that it's getting. The rate we ended up picking was also heavily influenced by a number of properties that are very, very similar. On page 34, 35, there's the Slate portfolio, which are full of properties that are more resemble this, and that portfolio capped at 8.6%. They had some good properties in there, some bad properties, and about 40-50% of their properties were very, very similar to the subject, being 1960s, 70s, 50s construction. That some had been repurposed, and most in the St. James area. And that's my presentation.
Thank you. Ms. Caldwell, questions for the applicant?
I have no questions.
Mr. Siva.
You mentioned this has a shared heating system. Sorry, you mentioned that this has a shared heating system.
Yeah.
What type of system is that?
Boiler.
Boiler?
Yes.
Does it have any other type of shared services between these buildings?
No, it was just a heating plant. Yeah, everything else is self-contained.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Linklater?
Yeah, just on page 1 of your brief, you have the age as 1965, but the city has it as 56.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Sorry, I have some other source material. Maybe somebody flipped the years on me. 65, 56, 65. could be an error, it could be 1956. I think that the difference in age is probably still slots it in the same general style of everything. I guess from looking at the construction, I would think 56 would be the right age, because in 65 the stairs would be narrow because it started getting cheaper. Efficiency experts showed up.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that's all my questions.
Thank you. You don't mention the sale, but you're saying that that was
They sold
the
together.
package.
Yes, the two properties for $900,000, and it was motivated by the owner had a site on Sargent, the corner of Sargent and King Edward, and that's where he operated Computers Plus, and he relocated over here when he got an offer to purchase that to be part of an unsolicited offer. What was happening is with the new hotel going in, they were changing approaches, so he lost his exit onto King Edward. So, I'm not having a stroke here. No, I'm not. Okay, I should shut up. He lost his approach on King Edward, so he used to have one on Sargent, one on King Edward, and so you could go in and out. And one was a one-way street, the other was a two-way street. What happened when the work started to happen on Sargent with the hotel, there were some changes made to the Sargent side with lane restrictions from westbound traffic coming into his site. And at the same time, he was forced to close the access onto King Edward because it was deemed to be a major artery. So he felt for his retail application, it just didn't like it anymore. An opportunity came to sell, and it was better for him to move his business, and he got this site. So there was some outside motivation, but then he had purchased the site a few years before the move. He wants to control the whole block. He wants to be the new tycoon of King Edward. So he owns 620, 640, and 650, and it's a nice guy.
Thank you. Desire for summation on this property?
No.
Yes.
Do you want to wait till we deal with the next one and do a summation together, or?
Well, what's different about this one is it's a pure rental property. We have actual income, and it matters a lot more, the actual income, than the assessment model. It proves what it actually can do, and aside from those differences, we dealt with the non-recoverables in a very good manner in that we stabilized them. They're very, very high. We stabilized them. It shows the importance of having a non-recoverable category, and that's what's supposed to be done. The proper methodology, and as far as the cap rate goes, well, a 1965 or 56 building like this that's been adaptively reused, shares a heating plan. I think our rate's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, will bring us to the last property on the docket today. 620 King Edward. Are you ready, Mrs. Susser?
Roll number 0700187200. For the 2020 roll year, we have an assessed value of $570,000. Building was built in 1956. It's 1 and 2 stories. Wall height's 10 and 12 feet. Zone M2 and has a lot plan area of 2.10. It is owner occupied, so there are no leases in place. Page 3, you can see some exterior photos of the property. And on page 4, you will see overhead views. Page 5, we have an income workup. total leasable area of 6,016 square feet, divided into 2 premises, with an overall rent of $6.60. We have vacancy at 4%, expenses at 2%, $3.75 for shortfall, 6.4% cap rate, bringing us to our value of $570,000. And on the following page, I have some rent comparables. All comparables are in the subject neighborhood, and rents range from $6.25 to $7 and to $8. Based on that, we ask the board to confirm our value today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, questions?
Page 6, the model.
Yes.
Okay. And again, a question on the land plan area. Now, when you do something on the land plan area, in this case you're saying 2 to 1, in this case, wouldn't you also consider the upper area as well in this ratio consideration, because we have a retail use and we have to deal with parking, not other issues?
I wasn't aware of that, but this is still classified as an industrial
Okay.
use. So.
Well, your picture, page 3, was pretty clear that it's repairs, sales, it sells computers.
Okay.
I don't think that's industrial, but so I was just wondering, on the perspective of retail usage, a 2 to 1 ratio is quite restrictive, isn't it?
I'll take your word for it. I don't work in retail. I have not, so I don't know a lot about parking in retail.
Well, I'm just looking at parking for retail, and it's one for each 250 square feet, floor area over 2,000 square feet. So on your gross tenant measuring gross floor area, not leasable. So on that basis, it has 1 row of parking up front, correct?
Yes, it appears that way.
Have you been in there?
I have not.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seeland.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Linkletter.
I have no questions.
And you're not aware whether this has a heating plant in it, or whether it's the other property that has it?
No, I'm not.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Neufeld, your review, please.
So this is the adjoining property, and it was built in 1956, so I guess both of them must have been built in 1956. Run by the owner, and the building, well, primarily it's a one-story building. The so-called second floor is a 7-foot ceiling, and it's used for their own personal offices for the business. It's not open to the public. And you can tell from the picture that it's a short ceiling. But it is in use, so we're going to consider it rentable area. Page 4, wait, I'm just looking at my own pictures here. I was just looking at such as page 4, you can see the pipe coming out from the building next door. As owner occupied, you have to assign a rent, and the people who did this thought maybe you should put the same rent as next door, but this building is in slightly better condition, although it has poorer parking. I'm going to agree with the assessor's rent on this property. because I just, well, I was actually in my mind thinking of the high sixes, because I know that there's a property down the street with a similar usage. Looks a little tight on parking, that's at 695. So I haven't had a chance to rework my numbers. And again, with this, we would use the actual vacancy rates as published in the Johnson report. And in this case, as an owner-occupied property, technically there is no non-recoverable. But we're applying 5%. And my NOI is here we go, 30,317. And cap rate, same as the other one, just rounded to 8.5%. This is just not, it's not a great property, and I'll talk about that as soon as I give you the number. So my value is 356,672, rounded to 357,000. Last year was a recommendation, which we accepted. Now, the parking I mentioned earlier, this is classified as somewhat of a retail use, retail and repair. The retail parking requirement is one stall for 250 square feet over 2,000, which means that there's a requirement for 21 parking stalls. And what they have managed to do out of this is to create 15 stalls. And that's because the one on the far west side are all employee parking, and they're boxed in. But what this means is that its attraction on the market is a bit limited. The owner had tried to purchase the land directly south of him, but they wanted too much money for it. But that was his hope, to have that whole block. 1956 construction. In the case of this one, which again is why I thought a higher rent rate and would be appropriate, is because we do have a grade level entranceway. So that's one advantage. It's less obsolete than the other one, so I was just addressing that with rent. Age and condition are similar. There have been some interior finishing in here in terms of some cosmetics, but nothing of consequence, nothing major. It's a repair shop and a computer showroom and their upstairs office. And it was obsolete from its previous use. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Caldwell, questions for the applicant?
You represented this client for 2018,
Yes.
and you accepted a rec at $508,000.
Well, I'm looking at 448,000.
That's what I had written down, 448.
Yeah, that's a typo. I have the order right here.
Okay.
448.
And now you're
there's a really nice person who offered it to me.
Okay.
I don't know where she went.
You're seeking 356. That's what's changed since 2018.
Well, in 2018, we had put a number of 365,000 on it. So and in that year, we used a slightly higher cap rate and a rent. different rent, different vacancy. This time I'm at 357, and so the difference in this year would be that we're applying, last year we just applied the assessment department parameters for vacancy. As I said, keep saying the truce is over, we're going to market, so the change in vacancy and the change in actual shortfall would indicate a lower value. That's the big difference. Nothing else has changed last year. Now 356, and the offer was made, and I had it accepted by the owner, so that's fine. I'm not really concerned. You know, sorry. Yeah. Oh, I see it. Both these numbers are in error here. I see that. It's 570. Okay, so someone just got lazy in the old cut and paste. The application of, we're fairly the same in terms of our presentation on this year in, year out. Previous assessment was 411,000. Previous assessment was 460, but we had a penalty problem, which we cured. I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
You mentioned that this property was obsolete from this.
Well, it was obsolete for its use that it was built for. It was built together with the one beside it as an industrial style facility, and I don't really know I can't recall what they were being used for prior to them being used for this. I don't know. I should. My dad used to work down there. He used to go there a lot, but I can't remember. But it was some sort of industrial style use, and good traffic on King Edward, but hard to get in and out.
The boiler location, is it in this building?
Wait, I know how to find out. Oh, I just thought of it.
Rooftops? Vent pipes?
That's it. Who's got the big pipes? .640's got the big pipes. Oh, they have to, because, yeah, 620 we're looking at, any of the rooftop is for the second floor service. Yeah, 640. Yeah, you can see it right there. On the assessor's page 4 of 640 King Edward, the top picture shows both buildings, and you can see the exhaust, the stack for the boiler, and then on the 640 building, there's a what that is. I believe that's a boiler chimney.
That's the stacks on the south side? South side?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I have no questions.
So can these be sold separately then?
Well, I think you'd have to decommission the existing heating system in one of them and convert it to some sort of electric system. So it would take, I don't know, 6,000 square feet, $6,000, $10,000 probably.
And
Unless you needed more power in it.
you're saying this one's owner occupied,
Yes,
so non-recoverables, there really aren't any, but you use 5%?
that's correct. Look, on the other one, it was 14,000, we put in 5%. This one is
Is this,
hypothetical, we put in 5%.
I calculate 14.4%.
Okay. I'll put in 14%, I'm comfortable with that.
So where would that come from?
Where's 14%?
Non-recoverables, 37.54.
Oh, I didn't use that number. When I gave you my recalculation, I'm sorry, I just went to 5%.
Okay.
Yeah,
And what was your recalculated number again?
the NOI was 30,317. That's using the assessor's rent,
Right.
my vacancy, 5%, and then my reserve and my shortfall.
Okay, and the cap rate is a
Just
quarter?
8.5.
Oh, you're not adding a premium for the heating?
Or actually, that might be a cost to cure rather than a premium. I think it's a surmountable issue. It's not like, we have buildings that aren't insulated. People say, well, just pay for the insulation. No, it doesn't work like that. There's moisture penetration. But with a heating system, it's just, for 6,000 square feet, you're probably looking at maybe $8,000 to $10,000.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Caldwell, a desire for summation on this or for all the properties we have? Mr. Newfeld?
No, thank you.
Thank you both for your presentations then. With that, I will call the hearing to a close. Decisions forthcoming.